I want to say welcome. Thank you all for coming to the July Board of Commissioners meeting. We're going to get things up and going. I'll lead us in an invocation and a prayer if you don't mind. Join me. Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the opportunity that we get to come and just enjoy this free world that we get to live in. We thank you for that. We thank you for all the blessings. We ask for your guidance, for your wisdom, for your discernment, and all the decisions that we move forward with. We ask you to keep all those that are out to keep us safe and protected, that you just be with them and keep them safe and protected, whether it be here at home or overseas. God, we're just praying for your hand of protection on them. And just asking for your guidance, not only for us as a community, but as a state and as a nation, that we strive to just do our best, that we strive to do everything we can that will be pleasing to you in everything that we do. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Mr. Godfrey, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please, sir?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Made a joke a while back that I'll always call on somebody to ask to lead the pledge, but I did it one time on asking to do the invocation and saw him almost have a heart attack right in front of me, so try not to.
You kind of hit me with that look.
So we try. As we look over the agenda, I do have a couple of things, unless one of you have anything that you feel like we need to go into executive session about tonight. I believe that we can remove that from our agenda. I don't have anything, and I talked to Phil and don't see anything from the attorney's side. The second is we got a call from GMA today asking us to make sure that we have an interim EMA director while we go through our search process. So I would like to add an item E under action items, add an item E for appointing an interim EMA director as one of our items that we go through tonight. Do we have any other changes to the agenda that anybody here needs to add?
I don't see it.
Can I have a move and a second to make those adjustments to our agenda for tonight?
So, second.
Move and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, so that'll be our agenda as we move forward. We don't have any employee recognitions in terms of their years of service tonight, but I don't know if there's any department heads or other elected officials that, if any of you have any, we want to make sure to give you a chance while we're here. I think somebody just make up something and talk about somebody sitting next to them. So I'll recognize Lisa for an outstanding job she's doing tonight.
Thank you, Chris.
But we don't have anything formal tonight in the employee. Yeah, I heard Mitch wants to recognize Sandy from the sheriff's office. So now everybody's feeling the pressure to say something. Sloan probably wants to recognize James. So, we do appreciate, I know I kind of joke about that when we move forward, but I mean, county-wide, between the sheriff's office, the county, the part-time employees and everything, there's about 400 people that serve Pickens County in some capacity, whether it's part-time, full-time. That includes our lifeguards and counselors over at the rec department, and there's no way we could do what we do without them. So we do want to always recognize and say how much we appreciate everyone and how hard they serve. In a variety of different capacities. I think when people really get to look at the nuts and bolts of what all it takes to make it happen, we definitely have some incredible people. Consent agenda, I don't have any items on the consent agenda tonight. Lisa, you have anything? Okay.
No.
So as we prepare to move into our finance report, I do believe that tonight I want to make sure to acknowledge, I know our local act is established that sets up our Board of Commissioners, and in our local act there's certain things that are kind of broken down because the most important role that we have as a Board of Commissioners is to ensure that we're watching closely the finances, that we're guarding the public funds that come in through the county, and that we're making sure that they're spent wisely. Local act ensures that the Board of Commissioners will work to ensure that there's an annual audit that we're going through there. It dictates as chairman the roles and responsibilities as a budget officer in reviewing and ensuring that the budget is put in place and that the audit's conducted and that the budget's presented to the full board. And in order to do that, it'd be impossible if we did not have someone serving in the role as our finance director. So tonight, I get to introduce our new finance director. Ms. Charlene Bunch is here with us to make this presentation. I'm going to give you just a brief summary bio of who she is and where she comes from. But Charlene brings over 30 years of accounting experience to Pickens County. She joins us from the State University System of Florida, which we will not hold against her. We'll make sure that we still recognize that she's got great potential in Georgia. But Charlene served as the fiscal and business analysis for the University of South Florida, and in that position, she was responsible for managing their capital improvements budget, which exceeded $200 million. Prior to that, Charlene held other accounting positions as a divisional accounting manager for Highwoods Properties in Tampa, Florida, and a general ledger accountant for Coca-Cola Enterprises for Tampa General Hospital as well. I'd like to join Commissioner Denny, Commissioner Barnes, all three of us, in welcoming Charlene to the team. And we're really, really excited for all the contributions we know you're going to make. I've already enjoyed getting the opportunity to witness you diving in deep. I keep asking at the end of every day that she is going to come back the next morning, and she's came back each day so far. So you won't get this introduction every single month, but we'd like to turn the floor over to you for a finance report at this time.
So let me start with, you have the second quarter fiscal year 2021. You can see here that we have where you are comparing the second quarter of fiscal year 2020 to 2021. You can see that last year we were about this time, we've only collected about 9.4 million, and today we've collected 11.7. With that, we are supposed to be within the expenditure budget of 50%, and overall right now in the revenue general fund, we actually are at 40.20%. Also, we go to the county-wide total expenditures for the quarter. Last year at this time, we had spent 14.5 million. That's was 48.1% of the 50% range at that time. This year, we're actually at 12.7 million, with 43.7 of the 50% range that we are at this quarter. Today we have expenditures, like I said, at 12.7 million. With that being said, with the general governmental expenditures, we're at 40.20%. With the judicial expenditures, we're at 42.42%. The public safety expenditures, we're at 45%. Public works expenditures, we're at 41.01%. Health and welfare expenditures, we're at 19.29%. Culture and recreation expenditures for the quarter, we're at 48.04%. Housing and development, we're at 39.12%. And then your enterprise and proprietary funds, excuse me, for the water department, we're at 46.9%. And with the airport, we're at 51.52%. With that said, the line item budgets for these expenditures were distributed to department head on July 12th.
Just trying to catch us.
Sorry.
It looks good.
I also forgot to mention that I did add in to the presentation, sorry, I did put into the presentation an additional column that will actually show you the total budget of revenue that was per category. So for instance, when you look at your general governmental expenditures, you can see that the overall budget for this particular category, you can see that in the commission in general expenditures is 46% of your overall budget. So you can see within your budget of your 4.1%, you can see most of your budget is being allocated to commission and general departments. And I did that for each judicial as well.
This is with just a few weeks of being back, kind of gathering. She wanted to try to add a couple categories in there, and I think has some good plans for some ways to provide even more transparency where you guys will be able to capture that.
That looks good, thank you.
Any questions on our finance report? Thank you, Ms. Charlene. And once again, that will be your one big introduction. And then if you can show us where you save us a ton of money later, we'll do another big one that month. We'll save it for another opportunity. All right, so under old business, we have discussed in a couple of different work sessions and even in one of our meetings about the adding of an additional board meeting for our monthly meetings. I'm not going to go through and read every single line of the resolution. I'm just going to try to summarize it as best. One of the things that we've been attempting to try to accomplish is how can we better serve in terms of not having to delay anytime there's a voting item. At the moment, we'd have to call a special meeting, or we have to wait a month before we can actually have something that we're voting on. It also kind of affects the ability when we're going through our work sessions to be able to look at any ordinance enhancements, ordinance changes, going through some of the rezone requests to give a public hearing opportunity. So we were looking at ways that we could try to improve and discuss that. And I know that we had discussed in previous meetings a schedule of how to do that to take place. On the final page of your packet, and I'll go back through the resolution, but if you look on the final page of the exhibit on the resolution for additional regular meetings, there's kind of a schedule that we would continue in the month of August to have our work session as we've currently been advertised. And then on August the 19th, we would have our normal meeting as far as our 6 p.m. meeting. But we would have an additional called work session before that, do a 4:30 called work session for that night. The reason for that being is in the local act, it states that there has to be a minimum of at least 7 days from the time that we have a work session to discuss a topic before we can actually vote on that particular issue. So in order to make the two meeting system work, we've got to have that first work session that we can then vote on at the following board meeting. So then after that, starting in the month of September, it would just transition to where we would have our work sessions on the first and third Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. and then have our regular meeting schedule at 5:30 p.m. on the first and third. So we would have a regular rotation every first and third Thursday. We would have those meetings. We would have our work sessions followed by the regular meeting. Go ahead.
And then executive sessions as needed.
Executive sessions as needed, so that we could then pull that after our meetings, so that instead of having it on a regular schedule. I know one of the original drafts we had discussed actually had us at 6 p.m. with our regular meeting and left an hour and a half. The concern with that was if we did not have an executive session between the two meetings, is it put the three of us hanging out in the same room waiting for an hour, and it put everybody that came to attend both would have to be just hanging out in between the two, which would create some issues in terms of open meetings and things like that. So to prevent that, we kind of moved the executive session back to the end. When we originally moved our meeting time this year to 6 p.m., talked about trying it for a few months to see if it increased the participation. I believe our participation's held pretty steady to what it was at 5:30, so that was why we were looking at just trying to move those to 4:30 and 5:30. In terms of how it is defined in our local act, the local act states that at a minimum we will have one work session and one regular meeting. This gives us the opportunity where we're adding additional, we're not trying to take anything away, so we're actually improving the ability of the transparency there. We will still only have our finance report once a month, so we won't have a finance report twice a month. It'll be a finance report once a month, and then we'll move our recognition of employees to the opposite, so that way we're rotating that to those different ones so that we don't constantly have a repeat. And if there is ever an incident where we have to cancel a meeting, which has happened in the past, it puts us not having to wait an additional month for the makeup. We'll actually have one scheduled for that month at that time. Do we have any questions or concerns before we move forward on that? No, we've talked about it a few times, but now we've actually got it in the form of a resolution. The final portion of the resolution just states that the Pickens County Board of Commissioners will conduct 2 regular meetings and 2 work sessions for each month, beginning in September 2021 for each month thereafter. The resolution is amended by subsequent resolution if anything's changed in the future. The first of those meetings would occur on the first Thursday of each month, and then at 5:30 p.m. and the second on the third Thursday. So it's kind of the same as what we've got in the calendar. And we have also placed in here where we will advertise this, which is by our local act, that the advertisement will be placed in the local organ, and I'm trying to find the exact period. The resolution will be published in the official county organ once a week for 2 weeks during the period 30 days prior to or immediately following the passage, and then once a week for 4 weeks after that. So that's just to follow our local act to make sure that we're advertising when we're meeting, and the public has plenty of opportunity to understand that meeting schedule. We'll also utilize social media as a way to pass that information on as well. If there's no further questions on that, do I have a move and a second to adopt the resolution for our new meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. On to new business. We have a resolution for the restructure organization chart. And for the purpose of the people in the audience with us tonight, we're actually going to put it on the screen behind us, but it's the same as what's on the last page in the exhibit within your packets that you have there. And I know we've got several pages worth of information. Essentially what we're trying to accomplish here is just to organize a chain of command and a structure to where we have a clean line of explanation of how the different departments are broken down. It's similar in concept to what we're currently doing, with the exception of right now we don't officially on paper have a command structure that keeps everybody from coming directly to me as chairman. And this gives us an opportunity to be able to make sure that we've got those. We've lumped the 2 categories into 2 departments. The 2 departments are broken down into the department which is Public Safety Services. It's created to include fire and rescue, including emergency services, fire prevention, emergency management, emergency communications, 911, the Marshal's Office for Code Enforcement and Animal Welfare. Chief Sloan Elrod, who's our current fire chief, would be acting and moving into the role of Director of Public Safety. He would continue to act in the capacity as the fire chief until a later time when a fire chief could be selected. The new Department of Administration would be the category that would be created to include the departments of Planning and Development, Public Works, Water and Sewer, Recycling, Parks, Parks and Recreation, Finance, Human Resources, Buildings and Grounds, and then Policy, Ordinances, and Transactions. Bill Wood is designated as the Director of Administration to oversee those particular areas. I know he currently is working within the Ordinances and Transactions and would be able to continue in those capacities while overseeing it. The chart is just a kind of a visual breakdown that kind of shows the number of the direct reports and goes through there. The resolution is set to make this effective in August. On August the 2nd would be the official first date for that to take place. I think one key thing to point out, because when you look at titles and things being moved around and changes, it's a budget neutral thing. People were moving, and by shifting some of the positions, there's no increase at all to our budget, to our current budget, so we'll be able to continue in our current operating budget. We will have some line item transfers to move and shift from a couple of departments to make these departments match up, but the dollar amount will not change, and we'll be as transparent in every possible way to explain when it comes to the next time when it shows that the numbers are different. But there will not be an increase in what's budgeted to create that structure. So without going through each page, do I have any questions from either of you related to the way that we have that broke down? Any concerns or anything?
Fine with me.
Looks good.
If we don't have any further, do I have a move and a second to adopt the resolution for a new organization?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So the next item, and then also for those that are here, we do have the visual aid for what was put on the screen, and then we also have the calendar that we can provide a copy if somebody needs that whenever it's done, so that you can grab those on those last two. We'll have those available afterwards. I know if you're trying to catch the screen, it may not have popped up as easy. Next item is referred to as the Airport Coronavirus Response Grant Program. The Georgia Department of Transportation has provided basically an intergovernmental agreement that's between Pickens County and the Georgia Department of Transportation for grant funds being received to the Pickens County Airport. The amount of the grant, I believe, was $13,000 total. Yeah. Under the allocation, the sponsor shall receive an allocation of $13,000 to be utilized in the manner set forth in Exhibit A, which gives a description. I know that the Airport Authority has received the paperwork, and in their last Airport Authority meeting, made a decision that they felt like the best need for that was to improve where their fuel tanks are, that there's some maintenance and some issues where the fuel tanks are. The state requires that we actually sign this intergovernmental agreement between us and them in order to receive those funds that come through there.
So we're not going to get a new terminal?
This, a whole different grant. This one's an older grant. We do have a new grant that just came through. They're finalizing the paperwork on it now. The Department of Transportation has a mixed federal and state grant of $1.8 million that they granted to us for our airport terminal. So we'll have a release ready next week to go out on that, but the Department of Transportation Commissioner actually came up with Representative Jasper's. Kind of been a surprise. I mean, we received the email. I think it caught everybody off guard that they did give the grant, but 70%. There's a small match from the county, but a bond that was already issued at the end of last year actually will cover that match. So they'll actually be able to build that new terminal. The bid process on that one will go out in September. And I'm sure they're going to send us an almost identical packet to deal with that $1.8 million grant as we go a little bit further. They just haven't sent it yet. Their timing is a little bit different. But if I could get a move in a second to be able to sign this agreement between us and the Department of Transportation so that we can receive those funds.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And then hopefully we'll be able to present that other in the very near future. We'll have a release of the paperwork of the actual granting of the funds on the other. Next item on our agenda under new business is the Talking Rock Annexation. We received a letter from the town of Talking Rock where they are wanting to annex. The particular parcel being lot number 133 in the 12th District of Pickens County. It is owned by RLF Properties. There's no action needed on our part. We did have our Planning and Development Office submit something to all the department heads that could potentially be affected, and there was no concern in terms of from the county. It's more of just a notification that they are moving forward with the annexation of the property. It's Talking Rock Properties, not RLF, I apologize, I've got those two. And it's a piece of property that's located on 136, right there on the outskirts of downtown Talking Rock. And there's no island, there's no issues that were found with that annexation, so they're moving forward with that. Which, as I said, there's not an action needed from us on that. It's more just to update you guys on the process. Next in category 10 is our action items. Under A, we're to approve minutes. We have our regular meeting from June the 17th. I think the minutes were provided to each of you guys prior to coming in tonight. If I could get a move and a second on the minutes from our previous meeting in June.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on those? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on our agenda for tonight, there are 3 different boards that have open slots that need appointees. The first of those 3 is Highland Rivers Community Service Board. We as the governing authority are asked to appoint a member to serve there. I'd like to request the board appoint Miss Mary Ghorley, is eligible and has indicated her willingness to serve on the Highland Rivers Community Service Board to complete the 3-year term from Alan Wigginton. That term began on July the 1st, 2020 and expires on June the 30th, 2023. In conversations with both Highland Rivers and with Miss Ghorley, they would love to have that relationship with Piedmont Hospital as a part of their board and also with their involvement in the community. So if I could get a move and a second to appoint Ms. Ghorley.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. The next is our Parks and Recreation Board. We have a vacancy filled, or that's left vacant from Mr. Corey Eubanks. He had asked to step down from the board due to some scheduling conflicts that he had had. So Corey Eubanks' position, that term began on January 1st, 2020, ends on December 31st, 2021. So it's for the remainder of this year. We'd like to recommend Kyle Haradon. He has indicated he is eligible, but he's indicated he's willing to serve on the board. Kyle is also a coach with football, basketball, and baseball. So he's a parent and active and then coaches and very active and involved with Parks and Recreation. Get a move and a second on Mr. Haradon.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on Kyle? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the next one is for the Sequoia Regional Library. We have Mr. Bill Miller has served on that board. His term expired on June the 30th of this year. And they have a vacant seat. Miss Rhonda Stancil is indicated she's eligible and has indicated her willingness to serve on the Pickens County Library Board of Trustees. Rhonda's a retired librarian with the Pickens County School System who also worked for the Sequoia Regional Library and retired from there as well. Is very interested in continuing to stay active and involved with them as well. If I could get a move in a second on Ms. Stancil.
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And on a side note, if there is any relation, it's probably maybe an 8th cousin or 9th cousin or something. I do believe her husband had studied his family tree once and told me that he thinks that we were related, but it's not even close enough that I ever knew it. So, the last item that we have under our action items is the one that we were placing on there from our amendment to the agenda is the appointment of an interim EMA director. The state of Georgia through GEMA does require that we have somebody acting in the role as an EMA director. We currently have that position advertised and received a couple applicants. We've conducted one interview. We've got another one lined up. So we are actively moving forward, but in the interim time, Mr. Philip Dean has served as the assistant EMA director under Johnny Nicholson before his retirement. Philip has worked closely with FEMA and GEMA for the entire time that I've known his activity. He's been very active in working with them on their grants and all the processes and their procedures. So I would like to recommend that we appoint Mr. Philip Dean as the interim Director of Emergency Management for Pickens County until such time that we do have a new position, and then we can provide that with that information to GEMA as well. Have any other discussion or any other recommendations? Do I have a move and a second to appoint him?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Next item on our agenda is guest comments. Do you have anybody in the audience tonight that has any comments that you'd like to bring forward? We're a quiet bunch tonight. Then we've taken off our executive session and approve it, so it is now 6:29. Do I have a move to adjourn?
Second.
All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys very much for being here.